Hello and welcome. It's Thursday, it's 4 o'clock. That can only mean one thing for reasons that are entirely arbitrary, and I don't remember exactly why. It means it is time for this week's weekly Etch Play live show. And as you will probably notice, this is a particularly exciting episode because I am joined by actual other people, which is really thrilling in this age of lockdowns and isolation. It's lovely to actually have other beautiful faces around. So today we are joined by Tam from Ansible PR. Thank you for joining us, Tam. We have Andy, who is a PR expert, currently taking a little break, recently having done a lot of work with the fine folks over at Renaissance. And he's having a little break because he's working on the greatest AAA release of all time, which is A Human Child. Well done, Andy. Congratulations for that.
Thank you. Don't put that much pressure on it, man. For
sure. You've got over the release, so that's the important bit. We also have Melissa, who is just about to start with the formidable ensemble of fine industry folks at Robot Teddy. Melissa, thank you for joining us. And lastly, but by no means least, we have the man with the biggest name in video games, Max. Sorry, that's awful. Nobody should ever really give me the mic.
That was good.
It's Max from Splash Damage, which I believe one of certainly London's biggest game studios. Fairly sizable group. So, yes, these are a gaggle of... I've just been fired in the chat. I'm sorry. Tag Andy. Yes, so video games marketing professionals, marketing comms professionals. It is the absolute busiest time of the year for these kind of folks. So I'm extremely grateful for them to give us a bit of their time. And we're, of course, going to be talking about E3. We've got E3, Summer Games Fest, all sorts of events and shows happening at the moment. So I thought I'd invite some friends along and we'd just have a little chat about what's going on. First of all, I would like to find out from each of you what you have felt so far for you has been the highlight reveal of this this E3 Summer Games Fest and everything else that's going on. Let's start with Tam. What's been your favourite reveal so far?
So actually, I'm going to pick two, if you don't mind, because one was so skinny on details, but Starfield, if the first person that says Skyrim in space, I'm like, yes. I want it, but there was so little trailerage about it. I know I want it, but I just feel like I don't know much about it. So my actual pick is Conway, The Disappearance at Dahlia View. Why the industry hasn't done a Rear Window or Hitchcockian style video game in this way before, I don't know. But when that came up as a reveal, I was like, yes, this is the game that I hadn't realised I wanted, but I really want. And I think the trailer and how they've presented it is really, really good, especially for a smaller studio and smaller publisher among the behemoths. That got my vote as my favourite reveal this year.
Excellent. So I've missed that one. Where was that announced? Which part of this thing that's been going on? Or if I asked a difficult question there. There's so much going on.
Yeah. I don't know which one it was announced on. It feels like Trailer Fest has just merged into one big event. But I know I saw the trailer, and it was the first trailer that I watched that I went to the website afterwards to find out more and read about it. So I felt like that was probably, led me down a rabbit hole. It just looks interesting.
Nice.
Was a surprise.
Very cool. Well, I'm definitely going to go and check that one out after the show. Andy, over to you. What's been your highlight so far?
So, like everyone, I kind of had a little bit of trailer fatigue, like a day after the Microsoft conference, right? Where it was just like 2 hours of just trailers. And randomly, I started watching the limited run, their conference, and it was just so weird. It's like 30 minutes of just weird 80s, 90s gaming nostalgia. And it kind of perked me up. It made me feel excited about E3 again. So credit to those guys for putting on an awesome showcase. There was loads of amazing games on there. So that was kind of my highlight number one, just kind of finding a new conference that wasn't from Microsoft or Nintendo or Future that I was excited about. Like, that's cool. That's a cool thing that I'll look forward to watching next year. So that's number one. And number two is something that I didn't know I needed in my life, which is a Tony Hawk styled game that mixes birds with skating, and it's called Skatebird. It's from a very strange developer. I don't even know where they're based, but again, kind of a little bit like what Tam was talking about. Like, I actually Googled and found out more information about that game and went on a little bit of a breadcrumb trail to try and figure out more about it. So yeah, those are kind of my two picks. Like, if you haven't watched the limited run gaming thing, like, you know, obviously watch the rest of this thing first, but afterwards you should definitely check that out, because it was just fun, a breath of fresh air, I would say.
That's definitely one of the things I do enjoy. Yeah, we've got the huge AAA announces, and that's all very exciting and fun. But some of the more niche releases, some of the indie releases, just really highlights just the breadth and depth of games, both games being created and the games creators as well. I really enjoyed the Day of the Devs show, and they actually had the devs introducing their games, and you got to see people all over the world in various size studios. I thought that was really nice.
Nice. Yeah, you want it to be weird, right? That's the whole thing. You want a little bit of E3 to be weird, and these shows were. So yeah.
Absolutely, that's what we like. Max, how about yourself?
Well, disappointingly, now you've said that indies are great and isn't that amazing, I'm going to give you two games that are not that. And again, I know you only asked for one, so I'm going to throw you a curveball. So, Metroid Dread, the return of a long dormant franchise. Yeah. It isn't Metroid Prime 4. Which perhaps is what I was really holding out hope for. But I think seeing the return of a 2D Metroid game in 2021 is probably something that I just didn't expect. And them coming out of the gate, showing it at Treehouse afterwards, like a really long hands-on demo, was really great. And then on the other side of the coin, another not quite as long dormant franchise is Stalker 2. So when the first Stalker trilogy came out, it was so rough around the edges, but had so much personality and so many great ideas that we were always kind of hoping that we would see a kind of next-gen version of those ideas. And, slotted into the middle of the Microsoft press conference, either side of Halo, Forza, just seeing Stalker back warms my heart a little bit.
Yeah, I thought it was really good and quite a nice kind of gritty trailer. I thought that's looking great. And what you're saying about the Metroid as well, I saw that, and it kind of looked like it's gone full circle. It felt very reflective of Dead Cells, which has obviously been a big game recently, which was obviously inspired by the original Metroid game. So I thought that was a real nice kind of circle of big name to a nice indie title back to the Metroid of old. That's fantastic. Melissa, would you care to share your highlight with us?
I would indeed, and it's something that is neither indie nor gritty, but I am excited for just any crumbs of information about the sequel to Breath of the Wild. And I love seeing the way that they are sustaining this level of excitement over such a long period of time. I often use Zelda as like an example when I'm talking to indie devs about marketing of like, we aren't Zelda, so we can't do this. Like, we can't sustain this level of excitement because we don't have that strength of marketing and IP behind us. So I'm always excited to see when it's like, oh yeah, but when you are Zelda, here's what you can do. And I'm really excited to have narrowed down to a year of release, and looking forward to kind of learning a bit more about the game.
Nice, yeah. I mean that we've been talking both indies and these AAAs, and I think that's a really interesting kind of contrast. And like I say, if you are Nintendo and you're launching an announcement about a Zelda, do you need the excitement and hubbub around an E3 and Summer Games Fest, or can you do that at any time? And equally for the indies, is there? So there's obviously a spectrum of scale of organisation here. I'd be really interested in your thoughts, and feel free anybody to just jump in about kind of is such a focused series of events. We've said it's kind of like Trailergeddon at the moment. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What are your thoughts? Tam, you're itching to say something, I reckon.
Well, first of all, I totally agree with Zelda. I thought I love the Metroid, the care that they took over that in how they were explaining it and developing it. But I mean, we were all watching Nintendo for that last 90 seconds just to get a glimpse of Breath of the Wild. And I think what they do beautifully is they show you enough of a trailer that's cut in a way that it's familiar, and then they give little bits that I'm just ridiculously excited. And yeah, if I'm an indie and I'm thinking, my game's also included in this, and the audience is here for Zelda, I mean, leverage that audience. It's a great opportunity. I also feel like because it was so, I mean, the word I think is overwhelming, that I've seen a lot, particularly journos. They will start there. Here's my E3 roundup tweets of the overwhelming week, and I've gone through all of this footage. And what I think is going to happen for the indies, I hope, is that because all that content is packaged, it's online, we now hopefully have a bit of time to go and explore it a little bit more and go follow those breadcrumbs and go find those websites. It was too much in a small block of time. It's kind of a bit of an assault on the eyeballs, and you see a title go past, and it's like, oh, I'll follow that because I want to see what's coming next. I think the indies that are showcased there have a really great opportunity now to keep sort of that long tail going, to keep saying, did you miss it at E3? Or here's a little bit more information we didn't get a chance to talk about. So hopefully the discoverability time window for them is the summer, not just E3 itself.
Yeah. How about you, Max? You got any thoughts on this?
Well, I completely agree with Tracy that I feel like the AAA studios don't necessarily need E3. I think Nintendo could show a 1-minute trailer of Breath of the Wild on Christmas Day and people would still tune in and watch it in their millions. But Tracy's completely right that what I've loved seeing as a trend over the past few years is at those big showpiece conferences, the platform holder conferences, is seeing independent developers share the stage alongside, Halo, Zelda. What I would say though is, when you asked us what the highlights were, I had to go and look at one of these roundups because, over the course of 10 days, there were so many trailers shown that it did kind of all merge into one.
Yep.
And it's amazing for the developers, but, maybe for consumers, maybe for us, it lost that little bit of something special because I would go from one conference into another, one trailer into another. So by the end of it, I completely forgot what was announced.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, I think there is. You touched on this, Tam. The opportunity. If you don't have an audience, if you're a brand new studio or this is your first title, and you are starting from scratch, this is such a good moment for you to be on the like Max was saying, be sharing a stage with there are hundreds of thousands of eyeballs looking at this. But yeah, Tam, you mentioned kind of like this is the start, and now you have to have a plan for what are you going to do from now. You've just got this attention. As a small title like this you've got a big slice of attention that you wouldn't have had otherwise. What are you going to do? It's probably still going to be a while before you launch, so you really got to be thinking about what are we going to talk about for the next 6-12 months before we actually get our game out there. Melissa, do you have any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big supporter of having a detailed strategy, and I think those lulls are as important as big moments like an E3. You need to have a kind of a clear place that you want to direct people. I mean, a couple of us have referenced to, going and looking for trails of breadcrumbs. Ideally, as a developer, you want to make it neon flashing signs rather than breadcrumbs, so that people have a clear place where, if you want them to join your Discord, make it very easy for them to get there. If you want them to download a demo, if you want them to wishlist you, whatever it is you want, you need to make it very, very clear to anyone who wants to come and find you where you are. So the worst thing you could do to kind of squander this sort of moment would be to get all of that attention, but then have nowhere to direct anyone in that funnel. So they all kind of go, oh, yeah, that game's cool, and then forget about it because there's nothing for them to latch onto. There's no social media or whatever. It'd be unusual for someone to make that mistake at this level, but that would be the main thing I'd want to be aware of.
I don't think it's that unusual. I think we all probably know.
Oh, yeah. I'm being optimistic.
Yeah.
But it's you've got to have something you want people to do and why. And I also think it's really good to have stuff for people to get stuck into if they're in your community. I always say it's really awkward when you've only released a trailer and then you wind up with a dead Discord or something or subreddit where everyone's like, oh yeah, like, I've analyzed this trailer to death. There's nothing more I can get out of this 60 seconds of footage.
Yeah.
For you today, it's just a very uncomfortable sort of feeling. So when you have things like demos and stuff like that, it can really, really help because there's at least something people can engage with.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You want to have that signposting so people know where to look for what's coming next, and then you've also got to have something to come next. Andy, any other thoughts you want to add?
Yeah, I think I mean that breadcrumb thing, adding Discord, adding Twitter, social media, doing reveal things like that. They're absolutely vital, and I think you saw that this year. There was a lot of people putting Discord links at the end of their trailer. I think that as someone that watched a lot of these in quite a comatose state, I would say that it's so hard to sometimes realize what the name of the game is in a trailer, which is crazy. But that happened a lot during some of the longer shows. Obviously there's things like Xbox are doing their like demo showcase thing at the moment, which is really cool. And the other one would be Steam Games Fest as well. So there's loads of games in that at the moment, and obviously for developers it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? Like you want to get your demo out there when you've got the maximum number of eyeballs, and we've trained consumers over the years to, at this time of year in June, to expect something to interact with. But obviously I think there's like 350 demos on Steam at the moment or something insane like that. So any way that you can stand out is good. But I think it's, the other thing I wanted to bring up, which has happened to me a couple of times when I've drawn up PR campaigns, is that you're part of these showcases and you accidentally have a game that's very similar to another game that's been showcased. So an example for that for this year would be, and I didn't work on this, but like Stalker 2 and Chernobyl Light, like, those two games are kind of similar. So there's a lot of a potential for like brand confusion there. And also just, as a developer, you kind of have to, I think, keep your powder dry at some points, but just have an idea of what the consumer journey is. I think when you've got a demo and something direct to interact with, there's lots of things that you can do, like putting an in-game prompt to get a marketing email address from them, or like any sort of incentives that you can give them as well, to unlock in-game content. So there's lots of options there. But yeah, I think it's E3's a great thing. I think all these gaming events are great things. You just have to make sure you've got a game that that can stand out, that isn't like every other game out there, that looks good in a 60-second segment. And as a developer, you kind of need to be able to speak to it in an excited manner as well. Like I'm sure everyone on this call knows tons of developers who are very talented and produce amazing games, but they can't talk about it in an excited way because they're too close to it, right? They just see all the faults with it. So I think it's vital to have that consumer journey, like absolutely. But thankfully, some of the first parties are stepping up to help with that, like Valve, like Microsoft, to make that a little bit easier.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, very much so. And yeah, as we've said, this has been an absolute barrage of trailers because of the position we're in the world at the moment. Everybody is at home. All we've got is video. This is the second year where, E3 didn't happen at all last year, so they've done a digital version this year, very much kind of at the height of digital events. I'm curious what you all feel about the state, the landscape of events being digital. Are you missing the physical events? Are you looking forward to getting back to them? Do you think we've learned anything? We've sort of unlocked any new opportunities here? Melissa, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm in two minds. I know that sounds like a really cop-out answer, and I don't mean it to, but on the one hand, the idea of physical events is a nice one. Most of my time in the games industry has been without physical events. I got my first full-time job in January 2020, sorry. And before that, it was just kind of part-time contract work. So there weren't many physical events for me. I went to EGX at the end of 2019, and that's it. So on the one hand, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a really cool idea. On the other hand, I do think it bears acknowledging that virtual events can be far, far, far more accessible for people who are in various ways marginalized. It can be a big protector against harassment if you have a Hangout button. It can be helpful for people with disabilities if they don't have to physically travel to a space and navigate that space. Parents, don't need to worry about childcare. There's all sorts of other elements that mean that I would be sorry to see us sacrifice digital events completely. I think that they should remain a thing, and I'd be in favor of a hybrid approach going forward. But it would be nice to have the opportunity to do things in person as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, such a good point too. We've made these events so much more accessible to so many more people. Going to an event, even in your own country, it's extremely expensive. It's time consuming. It's time off work, travel, accommodation. Often there's hundreds, if not thousands, of pounds ticket prices. So yeah, really lowering that barrier, and like you say, all those other inclusivity that we've added through the appearance of digital events is absolutely key. How about yourself, Max? Any opinions? Are you missing digital events? Missing physical events? Or
well, I think Melissa's hit the nail on the head. I think there's nothing quite like being in person at an event. Seeing your game being played by people in the flesh is really exhilarating. But if you look at the cities that these events tend to take place in, it's London, it's LA, it's San Francisco, it's prohibitively expensive. I'm sure a lot of us wouldn't go if we didn't go, as part of a company. So I completely agree with Melissa that I think some sort of hybrid solution in future would be amazing. I know EGX Res previously has done their sessions and they stream them online, which is a nice first step, but I think there's definitely room in the market for someone much smarter than me to work out how to do in-person and online events brilliantly. Because for us as well, in terms of getting eyeballs on products, an in-person event might have a few thousand people over the course of a weekend, tens of thousands. But you only need to hop on YouTube now to look at some of the trailers that have been uploaded this past week, and they eclipse that already. So I think there's definitely value in both.
Absolutely, definitely. Andy, any thoughts? You were saying before you're looking forward to getting back out to an event.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for me, I've been around since 2010 as a journalist, and now as PR and an advertising consultant as well. And I think for me, what gets lost a little bit when you just have digital events is that this isn't so much the case with indies, but in the case of the AAAs, they're, marketing people are incredibly smart, and they don't let you see certain things about games in development. Everything's super, super polished. And I think sometimes I worry with consumers that they don't necessarily know the nitty gritty of what it is to develop games because of that. And I think you lose a little bit of that magic when it's, a polished trailer, or even, I've done developer Discord sessions as well, and it loses something there. I think that meeting people face to face, I think Melissa's totally right on the accessibility front, and Max is right on the cost front as well. I think it's more just, we haven't had a physical event. There's been no PAXs, there's been no Gamescoms, there's been no E3s. EGX has been limited as well for 2 years, and it feels to me like a lot longer than that, because they are such a staple of the gaming calendar in terms of advertising, in terms of editorial strategy, in terms of all as well development production as well, because you use these things of we need to have a milestone build ready for this. Here's our preview build 1, think about preview build 2, and then we do go through set and all that stuff. So I think for me, to lose the physical events, the dad inside me that needs loads of sleep would say, let's do everything remotely. But I think the 21-year-old in me that enjoyed going to Cologne, getting lost at 2 o'clock in the morning, or seeing developers who are heroes of mine for the first time. I don't think you can you can really trade that in, to be honest. I think a hybrid approach would work, but obviously you need to think about cost. It's always about costs, and again, even when you have a booth, you need to think about that consumer journey as well, and giving people cards, giving people t-shirts, whatever, just something to stay within their consciousness, if you like.
Yeah, I think we've definitely had a long enough period with forced digital that we've got pretty good, or we're getting fairly good at that. But I completely agree on the hybrid approach. But we can still take lessons as well. We can make in-person events more accessible, more affordable, more safer environments. There's always going to be work to do. Obviously, I organise previously helped organise numerous events, and it's definitely learnings that we can take for our events, and I'd like to think everybody else will do. Tam, any thoughts?
I mean, 10 years ago, going out to E3, it was a force of strategic sort of crazy mentalness, because you'd go to the press conferences and then you sort of have to plot out your time because you're not going to be able to play everything. But it was the playing everything and getting your hands on it which gave it colour. So you see a load of trailers, you hear the announcement, you go, yeah, that's great, and then you think, would this be good for my readers? Or I have this game to promote and I want to differentiate myself. I mean, this year I've seen quite a few games that are like, oh, it's a bit Left 4 Dead, isn't it? Co-op is a big thing. And we're like, yes. And now I want to be able to show you a little bit and show you why mine's different. And I feel we've lost a bit of that colour with the virtual events. I totally agree with Max and Melissa from a practical point of view. Actually, the first E3 where the press conferences went online on YouTube, and being able to work from home, to report on the show, be able to promote content, and have 2 or 3 people that can maybe help you, you're able to cover a lot more. But then, are you saying anything different to everybody else? And are you telling that real good thread of developer story? I feel like it's developers that kind of lose out a little bit. And Melissa's right. Have a demo if you're going to have this big stage. Have a way of capturing that audience. You can't just have a trailer. You've got to think about that color. And I think my overall takeaway was, particularly with the E3 element, I love the Summer Game Fest, by the way. I like that sort of, here's a company. It's not a press conference. We're talking about a particular thing. So I really like that format. It's like, tuning into a telly show every week, really, just about games, and that's amazing. But I think for E3, I think one of the challenges is getting through all of that content, looking at, I mean, we've seen the overviews, and it tends to all be kind of then the same kind of stuff that we're reading about in all of these overview kind of contents. And I kind of miss those little, and here's 7 different news items about this particular game because I'm now focusing on this thing in the game or this thing in the game. And I feel like E3 tried to replicate the physical experience in a virtual way, rather than designing a brand new virtual digital experience for people. And I think those events that are trying to just carbon copy what you would do in a physical space, so we have a 2D expo, we have trailers and reveals, and then we have demos that you can play. It's, you're sending people off into so many different directions, and you're not really connecting them, and networking online has been difficult the past 18 months. I think I would have liked to have seen something that was specifically designed for this audience. You've got a big global audience and you've thrown masses of content at them. Did it have to be the same time zone? Should there have been a criteria that says as soon as you've seen something you can play it because it would be on the show floor? I don't know what it looks like. I don't think hybrid we're quite there yet. I think developers massively miss out by not having people just test the fun element, which you only get when you physically touching it.
The only feedback you're getting is numbers. How many views? How many mentions? What's the sentiment? But you aren't getting to look, and where are people getting stuck, or when do their faces light up? At what point in the trailer or in the demo? And
there is something about not just we miss on being en masse together. You've got this global audience, but it wasn't really connected together, I feel, this year. And I think we've seen enough video conference platforms and 3D interactive, experiences that we probably could have done something a bit more fun for E3 to make it feel like we were people attending it, even though we're not necessarily in a hall.
Very much spectators, and
Yeah.
perhaps there was opportunities for us to get more involved in a remote world for sure. Okay, I am going to wrap us up there. Thank you all so much. It's been brilliant to have you on, and for me to be able to benefit from all your collective insight and get to ride your coattails and pretend, I know what's going on. That's nice. What we will do is we'll make sure we include everybody's social media handles, and we'll put that out, and the video will be available on YouTube afterwards for anybody that joined late, or if you want to share this great insight further afield. But yeah, that's it from us. And thank you again to all of my guests. We had Andy, Max, Tam, and Melissa. And yeah, we'll see you all same time next week, and hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dan. Bye.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.